Hey guys, this is OG from Crypto Nights back with another cryptocurrency video. So yesterday or the past few days, I was showing you that there was an inverse head and shoulders pattern forming, right? So there was two actually. One is this larger one here with a target of around 41K, and then there was a smaller one like this, and this had a target of around 38K. Unfortunately, we started to get some bearish signs, right? So originally, I was getting concerned when we had this rejection tail here, and then when we were struggling to get above the 200 period moving averages here. So I was also saying that my lines in the sand were, around the neckline, around this area, and then this area here would be another very bearish place for us to break under, and then lastly, this, if we go below this, then I'm completely out of my trade. So right now though, it's looking like we are coming back down again to test 30K, right, which is definitely something that we do not want to break. In fact, I didn't want to see us come back down here at all, right? I would prefer for price to actually rally from here, right, to have broken above 200 MAs and then continue upwards, in an upward trajectory. But unfortunately, bears took over. Whether we had a number of things happen, right? One was around Elon Musk tweeting and then coming out spending FUD again, saying something along the lines of how many Bitcoin maxis that it takes to screw a light bulb, right? Obviously spreading FUD, potentially to cover for the fact that one of its largest investors had essentially sold all of Tesla stock. So I think one of the things that we're seeing is every time there's something negative about Tesla, Elon Musk comes out and pulls something about negative about Bitcoin, potentially as a ways to divert attention from the fact that things aren't going well with his own company. So it's just a theory at this point, but it's looking like this is what's been happening. And then also the options expiry, right, that happened, and we saw a lot of shorts pile in to prevent a negative outcome for their short positions. So all of that said, essentially is bears took control over the past few hours, the past the day or so, and so we actually got rejected right at this 200 period moving average. It was in fact the first retest of it, which is typically where I look for shorts, right? And so when this failed to break, this is where I was starting to get concerned, right, as I was posting to you guys. But now let's see what's happening, right? Now we're back at around 30K. If we pull a fib from this low to this high, and which is even typically I would even pull a fib like this because I like to pull fibs on larger larger trading ranges, right? When there's an impulse leg where the range is much larger than this, but this is what we have to work with. So let's do that. We see that the two remaining fibs, right? The two fibs that where there's hope for a bounce is the 61.8. This is typically my preferred area for a bounce on Bitcoin because typically, historically speaking, Bitcoin has respected the 61.8 on all major time frames. And so, but unfortunately, while we did get a small bounce here, it was essentially nothing, right? Essentially consolidation and then broke down. And now we're testing the 78.6. So this is essentially the line in the sand, right? Because one, this is the last essentially important fib for price to bounce, and then secondly, right underneath we have 30K, right, which needs to hold. And so right now we're between these two fibs, and this is make or break moment for me. If we can break above here and start to trend up, then potentially we have put in a higher low here, right? So low, a high, higher low, right? And then the next thing we want to look for will be a break above 35.5 in order to have this higher low and then higher high pattern, right? So on the upside, that's what I would be looking for, is for price to stabilize here, break above 200 period moving average, and then get a new high above 35.5K. On the downside, if we were to close below this, right, then obviously the only thing in the way would be 28.8K, which was the low established here. But honestly, in this case, I'm probably going to be pretty bearish, at least in the short to medium term, because we've already tested, if we zoom out, right, we've already tested this zone here a number of times, right, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and typically if a level gets tested over and over and over again, especially when we have when we break it and make lower lows, right, then that level is more likely to break than not, right? Whereas if we look on the opposite side, right, if, how we've been trading in this range, right, after we had this crash, on the top side we don't have that pattern, right? There's a test here. You can argue there's a potential test here, but you see how it didn't even make it up here. Then we had another test here, but again, it didn't even make it up here. So for one, there are fewer tests of the upper range, and two, when we do test the upper range, we can very obviously see that there's not really enough or too much pressure to push it up, right? It actually doesn't even make it up here. Whereas on the downside, we've not actually broken this, which means that a lot of liquidity, right? This is another way to look at market is market makers want to push prices to where they can grab liquidity, right, in order to get better fills, right? Well, what does that mean? So on the downside, right here, you can see how with this low here, how a lot of people might have set their stop loss right below this, right? Which means that if price gets, if price gets to this level, those who have longed will be forced to sell, right, in order to cover, because they hit their stop loss, right? Which means that these market makers know that there's a lot of orders that they can buy, right, on the cheap, because as these longs are forced to sell, they can buy at this price. Whereas if price is above this level, then if a larger whale were to market buy, then it will push prices up, right, because they're putting buying pressure. But when they hit, when they stop loss hunt, then they can actually get large fills without dropping price higher too much. But once an area's liquidity has been grabbed, right, or has been taken out, if we want to see is price to reverse strongly to the other side to indicate that now price is ready to move to the other side. But if that doesn't happen, right, if price once again comes back to it again and again, then the liquidity in this area will dry up, and what that means then is there will be no volume, and with lack of volume, then there's a lack of support, right? Because there's no volume here, there are no orders here. Then if we do break, then we might see a huge break, and so that is the danger that I'm seeing right now, right? As I'm recording this, it seems like Bitcoin is bouncing a bit with good volume, so at least a good sign for now. But this is very short term, right? This could reverse in a second, so I want to monitor this. But right now, essentially, we are, on the last legs, right, or the make or break, right? Because this needs to hold. We need to bounce here. If we don't, we risk falling quickly through this area to 22K. If we pull up the VPVR, which for some reason I'm having some technical difficulties pulling up right now, but if we pull out the VPVR, which shows where the largest volume has been traded, there's we see this huge gap, which means that again, this is essentially a vacuum, so price can come down very quickly, and if we don't hold here, then next level will be 20K. So this is pretty critical now. That's the only way I can say it. So the next few hours or next day or so, I'll be monitoring this very closely, because either we head up here and potentially start the next or at least range, right, even if we stay range around between 30K and 40K right, until we're ready to break to the upside. Otherwise, if we break here, then downside is looking pretty ugly. So that's it for today's. Actually, no, let's look at ETH, right? Let's look at ETH. So something interesting on ETH actually. So on ETH, right, so we saw this false breakdown here, so a rally. Now again, we're testing this level again, and we want this again on ETH, right? We want to see this hold as well, because if this doesn't hold, then we're looking at a long way down from here, right? So this is going to be important for ETH to hold this level and then to continue upwards. So for both Ethereum and Bitcoin, we are in what are critical levels, and obviously without needing to explain further, this essentially determines the rest of the alts as well, right? So now if Bitcoin and Ethereum both fail here and crash, most alts will do so as well. So, and potentially get hit hard, even harder than Bitcoin and Ethereum. Anyways, that's today's video. It's not the most bullish of videos, but I'm here to show you what I see, right? I'm not here to offer only bullish news or hopium. I share both sides of the story. We're here to trade the market and to protect our capital. And so even if we don't have to trade every move, right, we need to know how to adjust our portfolio exposure to make sure that we stay safe. Anyways, that's it for today's video. If you guys appreciate this type of content, please do give this video a thumbs up, and I recommend that you subscribe so that you can get these videos in real time as well. So sometimes we have trade alerts that are very time sensitive, where you only have maybe 15 minutes or an hour to enter into a trade, and so it's very important that in those cases you get this video as soon as I send it out, and you watch it, and so that you can take action, so that you don't miss out on those opportunities. Thank you guys, and see you in the next one.